afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority meeting. We have a full agenda this afternoon, but hopefully we won't delay you unnecessarily over it. Do we have any apologies, Katie?
Yes, Chairman. Councillors Ado, Carroll, Hall, Priestley and Sherwell.
And I understand Councillor Rouse is en route. Okay, thank you. We have 3 sets of minutes to review. First of all, the minutes of the Fire Authority held on Wednesday, the 8th of October. Can I take them as read and agreed? And then the next item is the minutes of the Fire Authority held the 8th of October. Sorry, jumping ahead. Yeah. Agreed. And the extraordinary meeting of the authority held on the 16th of October. Agreed. Thank you. Do we have any questions to accuracy on any of them? No. So matters arising. We have on-call improvement programme update. A member asked if more work could be undertaken on trained full-time firefighters that live in Buckinghamshire, and what was needed was done to attract them to retain for the service in the communities and those stations that needed extra staff. Deputy Fire Officer advised members that he did not have up-to-date numbers to hand but would provide them to members as he was sure to increase since last year. The Deputy Chief Fire Officer had updated member following that information. The on-call workforce comprises 55.5 full-time equivalents, represented by a total of 121 individual employees. Of these, 52 employees are dual contract, serving as both whole-time and on-call in BFRS. This accounts for 43% of the total on-call workforce. In addition, we have 8 employees who are whole-time with us and doing on-call in another service. These services are Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire and Bedfordshire. That completes matters arising. Moving on to item 4, disclosure of interests. I assume members have nothing further to declare than is already on record. Thank you. Move then to Chairman's announcements. Quite a bit. But I can find my paper again. Oh, sorry, I've got it here. So I think the first thing to mention is fortunately celebrating some success at the National Fire Chiefs Council Prevention Awards for 2025. Firefighters Robbie Jackson and Jack Edwards have been formally recognised at the NFCC Prevention Awards for volunteer recognition in 2025. Their nomination reflects their exceptional work as armed forces champions, bringing together more than 25 agencies, charities and local businesses to support veterans. I must say, having attended the veterans event earlier in the year at the Blue Light Hub, which was absolutely rammed with people and was a huge success, I take my hat off to those guys for the efforts that they have put in. They have transformed our fire stations into trusted hubs where veterans can access the help they need. We're very proud to see the impact of them being recognised nationally. We're also delighted that our partnership with the Safety Centre, Hazard Alley, was also recognised with more than 40 of the centre's volunteers formally acknowledged for their vital contribution their dedication in helping deliver immense safety education to thousands of young people each year, including my granddaughter who visited there recently with her school from Whitchurch. This dedication to deliver immersive safety education to thousands of young people is central to the partnership's success, and this national recognition reflects the scale and impact of their commitment. These nominations shine a light on the dedication, compassion and community focus shown by our staff, volunteers and partners across Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes. And turning on to some nice financial benefits, apprenticeship levy from Milton Keynes. I wanted to share the good news that we have had approved a transfer of levy funds from Milton Keynes City Council of £84,000. This is to fund our 6th cohort, 14 firefighter apprentices due to start in 2026. This gives us direct savings, of course, and tops up our levy account, meaning we will be able to fully fund more apprenticeships directly without the need to pay any additional top-up. This is the same arrangement we've had in place with Milton Keynes City Council for cohorts 12 and 13, meaning that our total levy transfer from MK City Council will be £336,000. We continue to be extremely grateful to Milton Keynes City Council, Mr. Mayor of Milton Keynes, for their partnership in delivering our firefighter apprenticeship scheme. I hope you'll pass that back to the powers that be, other than your good self.
I certainly will, Chair.
Launch of our Thrive Leadership Programme. Pleased to confirm that our new Thrive Leadership Programme has launched. This programme equips our leaders with the confidence to get the best from their teams and themselves, focusing on early intervention, conversations, performance management, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and strategies to manage effectively. The feedback from attendees so far has been very positive, with high levels of engagement. The pilot programme will be reviewed in the new year, and any further changes made before it rolls out to the remaining line managers in service through 2026. White Ribbon Day and 16 days of action. Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service actively supported the White Ribbon campaign during White Ribbon Day on the 25th of November and the following 16 days of action. The service raised awareness through a series of social media posts created by BFRS staff and by publicising internal articles focusing on key issues such as honour-based violence, safe travel on public transport and online safety. On the 3rd of December, staff were invited to the Houses of Parliament to engage with cross-party supporters of the campaign and to hear updates from the CEO of White Ribbon UK and many MPs on progress and future initiatives. Welcome, Councillor Rouse. On the 5th of December, officers also hosted a discreet event at High Wycombe Fire Station for women and children who are currently being supported within Wycombe Women's Aid, Refuge and Outreach Services. The event offered a secure and welcoming environment, creating a positive experience that reinforces our commitment to helping women and children who have been subjected to abuse and violence by men. These activities reflect the service's ongoing support to the vision of ending men's violence against women and girls and demonstrates a strong commitment to the advocacy of this important accreditation, which is now entering its 3rd year. I want to take this opportunity to thank Marie Crothers, who has recently retired from the service after a long career. Marie was an influential driver in bringing the White Ribbon Accreditation Service, and I know we all recognise this work as a powerful driver for change. So thank you, Marie. And an update on Westgate, Westcroft Venture Park on the training centre. The planning application for the proposed training venue was validated on the 3rd of November. The internal target date is the 29th of December with a determination deadline of the 2nd of February 26. As of the 7th of December, the planning application had received 2 public comments, one being an objection and one neutral. Then there were 10 comments from other consultees, and the service is currently working through the points raised. So that completes Chairman's announcements, save only that. Your timing is immaculate, Councillor Rouse, because we would actually like to take the opportunity to make recognition of your service for 3 years as Chair of the Authority through the presentation of an award, if you'd like to come forward. Wrong side. Moving on to item 6, petitions. Have we received any petitions?
None, Chairman.
Questions under Standing Order SOA 7?
None, Chairman.
Moving on to item 8. We have recommendation from the Executive Committee of the 12th of November, the Performance Management Report. Do you have any comments or questions on the Performance Management Report?
Yeah, hi. So, good afternoon all. I'm here today to present the Services 25-26 Quarter 2 Performance Pack. As always, I appreciate there's a lot of detail within the pack and a number of papers following this, so I'll try and keep my introduction as short as possible to allow more time for questions. This pack is now broken down into 6 areas. These 6 areas are the services objectives as set out in the 5-year Community Risk Management Plan. The report is also supported with a front cover paper that details 4 highlighted measures from the report and tries to provide a little more detail on those measures that are more likely to draw attention within the reporting period. It's also worth noting that as per the governance process, this paper was first presented in the Executive Committee. The reason I raise this is that while several questions were answered during this meeting, a couple of requests were made. The first was we provide more insight into some of our longer response times. While the Q2 pack being presented today has not been changed as a result of this request, we do now scrutinise the incidents that had a longer response time on a monthly basis with the plan of providing more detail in future reports. The second was in relation to the service providing a workshop to help members understand how we manage and measure our performance. This is something we're still looking to arrange early next year. However, we're very mindful that the service will be receiving its HMIC FRS inspection in February. With this in mind, I would like to remind the room that should anybody need any support in relation to our performance prior to the workshop, please do contact myself and Katie and we're here to help. With all that out of the way, I'll just open the room up to any questions.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the report. I wanted to ask a question on PRT.1.01 fire safety audits, which is on page 65, I think, of the pack. So in the commentary, it talks about consistent progress made in quarter 2, narrowing the gap, and the fact that we've got several staff members expected to become fully qualified in the next month. I was just looking at see what it would take to get back on track, and I think I calculated that we'd need to be hitting about 80 per month between now and the end of the period. And I wondered how close we were going to get, because if I actually look at the performance of quarter 1 versus quarter 2, I think that I think it's probably just exaggerating a point a little bit to say that the gap had narrowed, because actually the gap had actually slightly widened. So it was really with a view of trying to understand how we can close the gap to the target rates that we've got for the balance of this municipal year.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Without the fear of repeating myself again, when I cover the protection assurance report, I will try and kind of give you a bit of an up-to-date picture of where we're at. Obviously, we've now got the results, and we look on a monthly basis of October and November. So in October, 71 audits were completed, and in November, 83. So year to date, our target would be 528. If we're to achieve our 66-month average target, we're currently on 468. So I think you're right in saying that actually there is a gap there. I guess the view in which we're looking at is the gap's narrowing because we can see that we're on that positive direction in terms of starting to see an increase improvement in fire safety audits, which is exactly what we knew would happen based on our staff going through their qualifications, gaining that experience and being able to go out there and carry out that really important regulatory work.
Thank you. That helps and confirms, getting to that 80 per month is kind of where we I think we need to be. And you said the last 2 months have contributed significantly towards that. So that's good to hear the update since the Q2 data.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points I would like some. I think PRV 301 and 302, not within our control or within the board's fire service control, but I was wondering what cooperation was taking place on the deliberate primary fires, because the majority, large number of them seem to be car fires. What cooperation was taking place with the police to see whether these were stolen vehicles, just evidence being burned up, or what was the issue there. And deliberately setting fire to others' property, you see there's a large number of loose refuse, including garden, 15 of those. Again, what education was being done by the council to ensure that householders were aware of what they were doing and what they could do and what they couldn't do. And then I have one more question, Mr. Chairman, after this, if that's okay.
Adam?
Yeah, thank you. Apologies, I was coming through the pack to work out where you were. So in terms of the deliberately primary fires, it's a shame I haven't got a report yet at the moment, but a report's been drafted from our lead fire investigator just to try and understand the level of impact that post-fires that we've got in terms of understanding deliberate causes, especially where there's the likes of arson. That's either that's obviously the impact of why that's happened. It's a shame I haven't got those to hand. If I have them by the end, I can share them with everybody. But it's really interesting to see the impact that we're having and some of the really good success stories in terms of some of that close work that we've got, especially with Thames Valley Police when we look at it through a forensic lens as well. So from a delivery primary fire point of view, we've got really good governance in place in terms of reacting to those. And then in terms of secondary fires, I think what you've suggested already is really important when we talk about kind of that community educational piece and how we both proactively and reactively respond to understanding kind of the types of incidents, the trends and the risks that are associated with those. So as we move into next year, we're going to have a really, really clear forward plan in terms of how we're going to have a kind of community safety engagement content calendar and what we're going to deliver out, and that will be based off of understanding some of the impacts that we had last year and some of the themes that we've seen, and making sure that we're targeting some of our educational messages and our outreach to try and support with the reduction.
Thank you, Adam.
The only thing I would add to that as well is, while we see numbers in this pack, what you don't see is how we fare compared to the national or other local services. And we fare really, really well in this area. It's something you'll probably see in the near future. We'll look to bring that sort of information for you, but it's just to bear that in mind that while the numbers here might look okay, they look really good compared to nationally, so just be aware of that.
Thank you for that answer, and I think it's a cooperation to embed the education which you've gone on about, which is very important. My next question is on, and my last question, is on 304, bank shifts. There's been some narrative in the introduction about that. I was wondering if the officers would like to expand on that and explain how that's going to be controlled.
Yeah, thank you for the question. As the narrative suggests at the top of the pack and on page 54 and 15 in the performance pack itself, during Q2 there was an increase in bank shifts. as we've seen, primarily driven by a combination of a number of things, and that's around long-term and short-term absences, seasonal leave pressures at that time, secondments, one of those being offset by a cost recovery, continuation with the training courses through that period as well, and those training courses cover a wide range of areas to continue developing and ensuring our staff are validated and qualified. And that's around areas of breathing apparatus, that's driving refreshers, large good vehicle initial courses, emergency response driving courses, water rescue courses, incident command courses, and USAR urban search and rescue courses. All of that took place during that period of time as well. To assist in the requirement to reduce that down to its lowest levels as well, we've had a review of our operational leave guidance, which has taken place. We are carrying out another review of that commencing this month as well, based on some of the feedback we've had. And that's to sort of reduce and remove the exchange of bank process, which is having some positive effects. So it's pleasing to report we saw a reduction of 29% in October in itself as well. But it's something we are obviously monitoring very closely. And also, as I've just said, we are getting the leave guidance back on the table again with all stakeholders involved in that. Hopefully that's answered your question.
Councillor Gone.
Very kind, Chairman. On page 19, I'd just like to come into the social media engagement that you've got on there, and with the impact of Facebook. Is that 24,500 hits within the month?
It's engagement.
Yeah.
It's engagements.
Fantastic. And then with those 100k views, and like you say, it's had a great impact on engagement. But has it brought the engagement required? So have we had a lot of people interested in recruiting or that have come from those Facebook pages, etc.?
In the absence of the Marcoms manager, I'll try and give this an answer. So it's difficult because we get engagements from all different areas, and depending on the month, there might be a different relation. So, for example, one of the biggest hits we get when we put stuff about our USAR dog, but that gets us into areas that we might not always get into. The biggest thing I would point out is the numbers. We've already beaten last year, and last year was a record for our social media numbers. So the numbers are great. We do look at the breakdown of who we do engage with and what aspects, but I don't think we're at the point yet where we use that as a driven technology. That comes next, but we're really happy where we are.
No, I agree. I think the hits are fantastic. You know, it's just nice to see what you could get from there.
Just to add on that, and one prime example is, and it probably links back into the conversation around education, we had a big social push a couple of months ago around our online home fire safety visit tool, and we could clearly track that push and that social media kind of presence there was huge engagement across our socials, but also that resulted in near on 100% increase in terms of completed home fire safety visits.
Gone. I've got Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I note, I think it's on, I'll tap this down now, 19 of 44. It's quite notable, isn't it, that the fire stations which are doing out-of-county responses, which is where we actually cross over into Buckinghamshire, crosses over into Oxfordshire, Berkshire, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire, Hertfordshire, London and total. And it is notable, like in my own local area, it was 21. And in Bolton, it was 13. And High Wycombe, obviously 25, which is quite notable that the amount of times that we're actually going outside to support other fire services. Is there a comparable chart somewhere where they come into Bucks, which would just to... because they come into Bucks, so it might be... Is that on the other page? Yeah. I didn't see that. But it is worth noting how many times we go out and support other people.
Respond to that?
And the other councillor answered it for me. That detail is on the other page, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Any further questions? No, then I'll move from the chair that the report be noted. Do we have a seconder to that? All agreed? Thank you. move on to item 9, which is a report on an update of standing orders relating to contracts. Who's going to be Mark on that? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So these proposed amendments reflect a significant update in line with the requirements of the Procurement Act 2023, which came into force this year. They incorporate detailed procedural guidance, enhanced compliance and transparency measures, and they will continue to deliver efficiency, accountability and effectiveness in the authority's procurement activities. The changes mostly impact what we call above threshold or covered procurements. So this is procurement for goods and services with a total value of over £214,000 or works with a value above £4.3 million, both of those including VAT. So the majority of our expenditure falls below threshold, and whilst this area of spend is not subject to the same rules as the above threshold procurement, transparency still applies. However, in these instances, the FAR Authority has increased flexibility to set the rules for the below threshold spend. So as part of this review, we propose to change the below threshold values and revise procedures aligned to different categories of expenditure. This is to provide more proportionate values and processes for certain categories such as small works, ICT goods and services, licences and consultancy services. The detail of the thresholds we propose to apply to each of those categories is on page 10 of the document, which is on page 116 of your packs. Now, there's two main reasons for adopting the category approach rather than the blanket approach we adopted before. First one is to provide the most efficient procurement process. So, for example, having high limits on IT or works allows us to stick to suppliers that we know are performing well, and it avoids having to do the kind of one-off cost of change of having to change IT systems, for example. And the second reason is to try and encourage more competition and participation from local suppliers and small and medium enterprises. The cost to small businesses of having to complete kind of significant tender exercises is high, or they don't have the expertise in-house to do those kind of really lengthy, really significant processes. By changing the thresholds, we can open up to more small businesses, especially around the capital works on some of our stations, which kind of aren't significant value to the authority, but are very significant contracts to those businesses. Opens up a lot more competition, will make us more efficient and provide a better service at the end of the day. So I'm happy to take any questions on any of those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mark on that? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Under section 6, which is on page 125 of our pack, 6.1, waivers and exemption approvals. Is there a process where there is an annual reporting of waivers and an annual review of waivers? If there isn't, then I would suggest that's something we need to look at in the Overview and Audit Committee. Was my first question. And the second point, on 6.1.3, I think there's a typo. I think it may be missing a 0. And on 6.1.4, it talks about approved by a committee of the authority. And I was just, and also the same point is made on 6.5.4. Does that cover any committee? Is it the exec? Is it overview and audit? Is it the authority? It just says a committee. And I just wonder whether or not our standing orders, or which I know we're amending here, but would that need to be specific, just as a committee? We don't have that many, so we could probably afford to be quite specific.
Yeah, certainly, thank you. All really good points and good questions. So in terms of waivers, no, we don't do an annual report, but I'm happy to take that point on board and provide an annual report of any waivers that are signed. They will have to be signed by either myself or Asif. There aren't a huge number, so it'd be quite easy to do a report on those for full transparency, and happy to incorporate that. Yeah, thank you. That is a typo on 6.1.3. It's missing a 0, so we'll get that amended. And it would be either the FAR Authority or the Executive Committee that would approve those, so I can make that specific in those procedures to help with the clarity. Thank you.
And just coming back to the point that was made about the categories, and I think there was a point around local businesses and small businesses. Is that something that we should expressly, I mean, I think it's attractive that we can make local businesses have the opportunity to work for the fire service, but I don't think that's actually incorporated into the principles of the policy, but I would be supportive of that if there was a way of doing that that would be fulfill the intent without necessarily giving us handcuffs.
Yeah, it's definitely the principle behind it. As I said, it's one of the primary drivers for doing it. I'd have to take some detailed advice from the procurement managers how we can do that, as you say, without kind of restricting ourselves unnecessarily. But yeah, just reassure members we're absolutely committed to supporting small and local businesses.
I think it's an important point to emphasise that we want to, wherever practical, support local businesses, small or large. Councillor Stutchbury?
Yeah, just to seek an understanding, on 21 it says disposal of properties, and it goes down to, it makes a statement, this is lands and assets, it makes a statement to a committee. Would it be better to name what the committee might go to rather than a committee? Because if it's going to the executive committee, it goes to the executive committee, or if it goes to the audit committee, it goes to the audit committee. It just says a committee. Would it be better to sort of name where it's actually going so everybody knows where it would be received? I don't think there's anything else with it, it's just I can't see where it's going to go. Would that be unreasonable to agree on a committee that it go to, which is logical?
Yeah, that's a similar point to Councillor Wilson, but in a different area, so thank you for picking that up. It would be the exec or the authority. There's no change to that section. That section's been lifted directly from our current orders, but I'm happy to clarify that in that document as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? No, all done? Then can I propose that we approve, subject to the amendments, that we approve the updated standing orders relating to contracts. So, do I have a seconder for that? Yes. Councillor Hussain. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 10, the health and safety report to be presented by Callum Bell.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This report covers performance overview, risk management, working with others, health and safety training, and a look forward, as well as some performance indicators. In previous reports, we have normally included in appendices at the back that comprises of our health and safety performance against 11 other family group fire and rescue services. However, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, MHCLG, didn't release the data this year until last Thursday. Therefore, we are not able to analyse the information and include that in the report in this time and time to include it within the body of the report this time. Nonetheless, once we have had the opportunity to carry out the analysis, we will be producing comparative performance tables and sharing it with Fire Authority members. Following on from that point, some of you will be aware that normally the MHCLG, previously it was the Home Office, published the performance data around September each year. And due to that lag, that then results in this report being later on in the year, which impacts on us and has a consequence on us with our own data within the report, some of which you will note is up to 21 months old. By doing that, what we aren't able to do is highlight some of the key achievements we delivered in the previous 8 months, for example, and these will need to wait until next year's report to give full details of. As some examples of what we've done in the last 8 months, our 3 more senior members of staff have received specialist training on health and safety roles, responsibilities, and also the improvements we have made to station audit processes. albeit they are captured in the quarterly Health and Safety Committee meetings, and the minutes of these are published externally as well as being made available internally. The safety event statistics for the year 24-25 identify that there has been an increase in the number of personal safety events by almost 22%, albeit this is still trending in a positive direction over the last 5 years. The reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences, REGS, RIDOR, as it's commonly known, has also increased by 2 from 10 to 12. This is still lower than the previous 22-23 year performance. Some of you may well have picked up on the absence of any equipment damage performance information in the report this year. We've taken the decision to no longer report on equipment damage within the health and safety report, that is, unless the incident caused or had the potential to cause harm or injury to person or persons. The reporting of this is still being managed, albeit through a different department and different function. For example, if a member of staff breaks an item of equipment and doing so, they themselves have not been injured, and the equipment being damaged did not present a risk of injury, then that would be reported as equipment damage, which is why we've now removed that from the health and safety report. Whilst there has been a decrease in the number of vehicle damage safety events, down by more than 25%, this is an area that we recognise still needs work and further improvement. Myself and the Assistant Chief Fire Officer have had a meeting with FRIC, the Fire Risk Indemnity Company, who are our insurers, and we are working with them to see how they can assist us further in reducing vehicle incidents, and look to drive this down, pardon the pun, that was not intended, drive this down further. Acts of violence have been separated out in this year's key performance indicators for 25-26, and the one event in the reporting period is for a member of the public who shoulder barged a firefighter at an incident when the service was called to extinguish a bonfire in the garden. The police were involved in this incident. The performance target for near misses has been reviewed and reset. Hence, in the pictogram, there is currently no directional arrow. However, this is something we are continuing to monitor, and we will look towards considering a directional indicator in this as in line with the review of the performance measures. A bit of a focus on contaminants. Of the 8 air quality monitoring devices the service has invested in and placed in different locations across 4 sites, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, vary the most. However, almost 80% of the time, the levels would indicate the air quality is excellent. Just less than 12% of the time, it is assessed as being moderate, and in less than 1% of all readings, which are constantly monitoring 24/7, it momentarily dropped into an inadequate reading, which is primarily at 2 of the 4 sites. One of these sites is near a busy dual-lane carriageway, and the other is associated with the cleaning staff opening up the cleaning cupboard and using sprays and cleaning agents and the likes. Based on the readings of 15 different air quality parameters overall, the evidence indicates that the air quality at our sites is very good. That said, there is more work to do and more to continue the improvement and protection journey. And we may benefit from the testing of air inside our crew cabs and of our operational appliances and on the surfaces of high-use, higher-risk areas, and this is now being planned within the contaminants workstream. As mentioned in last year's report, following the introduction of line manager notifications within the VISA is our safety event reporting system, to highlight overdue investigations, in 23-24 it improved to 79% from the previous year. In this reporting period, we're seeing a further improvement, and we are currently trending around 1 to 2 safety events that have not met the level 1 and level 2 deadlines set by the service. Thank you very much for your time. I'm more than happy to take questions if there are any.
Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Callum, for the report. Just want to focus in on the decon and contamination area. I noted that we had, coming into the reporting period, done work in each station of identifying low, medium and high risk areas within those stations of contamination. Would you be able to share with us the reports for each station, and in particular give us a sense of those stations which have the highest number of higher risk areas of contamination, just so we get a sense of where the risk is distributed across the estate? And if the FBU were here, what would they say are the key things that we need to be doing more of and faster to get to the levels that they would want to see from their decon campaign? And then phrasing that in a slightly different way, but to try and get to the same understanding, if we were setting ourselves an ambition to be the leading service in the UK in terms of protecting firefighters against contaminants by the end of, let's say, the end of next year, what would we need to do? What would be the investment, and what would be required of us to get there?
So in relation to your first question, the in-biot devices that we've got, we do get reports. I have got one in a PDF that is taken as a snapshot from a number of weeks ago. To answer your question, yes, we can share that. And we'll share that through the appropriate channels in the level of detail we need to consider. In terms of the FBU, I can't speak on behalf of the FBU. I don't represent them, so I don't know what they would say as their top priority. But they certainly are actively involved in our contaminants workstream and the working group, and we have got a very good relationship from a health and safety perspective. From my observations and engagement, it's very positive and very engaging and very supportive. In terms of where do we see ourselves, we do know we've got some more work to do. We are expecting in the next, starting from January, Carol Downs, the HSE lead, for fire, is along with her team, will be auditing the majority of fire and rescue services. We have identified some areas that we are aware of that we need to continue with monitoring. The bit I mentioned earlier on around doing some more analysis in crew cabs and on surfaces is a piece of work that we're looking to do to see what the evidence basis is, which will inform other bits of work. And we'll also be led by whatever the HSE find and advise in terms of direction of travel. We've got good representation locally within the service, within the Thames Valley, and also at a national level. The chair of the South East Health and Safety Group is also the representative that sits on the National Committee for Contaminants. And we had the most recent meeting yesterday, and we got an update of where we are with a range of those things, pretty much live from what had gone on very recently. So we do feel very well connected, very well informed. Your point, which is a really good one, around what would be, I'll use my words, exemplar, the use of the air monitoring devices. I am only aware of one other service in the country that's doing that. I'm not saying there aren't others, but when we demonstrated that yesterday at the South East Group, it got the reaction I would expect to do in terms of where we are and leading on that particular piece of work to use live air quality analysis to inform a range of other decisions going forward, and also to give us some comfort of what we are doing to protect our staff.
Thank you for that, Callum, particularly that last point. Councillor Rice, you content with that? Yeah. You done? So I've got Councillor Wilson. No? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report. On page 137 of our pack, I was observed that so in the third paragraph, out of the 39 personal injury safety events recorded, 22 occurred in training activities, with 15 of these being from operational training activities largely based on stations. Now, one could take that as, well, it's good because we do a lot of training, and therefore, sometimes people are going to potentially have an injury. What concerned me was highest causations were inattention and not following procedure. And obviously, we would want to ensure that there is full attention and full following procedure, particularly in training events, but obviously that then reflects elsewhere. So what confidence can we draw as the authority and how that's been addressed in terms of inattention and not following procedure during training events. And that's kind of my first question. Second one is regarding to personal injuries related to handling, lifting, carrying. But obviously, I'm sure we give everybody lots of instruction about that. But is there more work we can be doing in that area? And then the third one, which is a completely different point, probably to Mr. Hemming, 4 issues down lower, it says, result of third parties causing damage to BFRS vehicles. Do we get the money back from insurance claims on that, where we have people damaging our vehicles, if we're aware of who they are?
So I'll take the first couple of questions. So in reference to training, this is an area that we've been aware of. We are doing a lot of work around and looking what is the root cause analysis of this. You've mentioned yourself that we do a lot of training. We're employing more staff, and more staff are training more often. Therefore, we would anticipate seeing more, but equally, that doesn't mean that we're complacent to there being more events. Each one is investigated appropriate to the level with the relevant trained staff. The recommendations that come from each of those investigations are fed in and actioned out to individuals. And the system I mentioned earlier on, Visor, is very good at automating those actions out to those individuals. It will not be signed off until those individuals have completed those actions. And it's conversations that we're having and continue to have with human resources and the training function to look at see what we can do more to reduce those events and also reduce the consequences of any of those events. In terms of manual handling, this is an area that we do see with people lifting, carrying casualty simulators up and down stairs and the likes, and lifting equipment. And again, it's another area that we continue to monitor to see what more we can do to further reduce the occurrences of those and the impacts they have on us. I think Mark, going to take the third question.
Yeah, in terms of the vehicle collisions, if a third party is found to be at fault, we will recover money from them or their insurers.
Can I just come back on the first bit? The causation routes of inattention and not following procedures, the extent to which that is the responsibility of the individual who's harmed versus the person that's leading the training, because clearly as a trainer, you have a responsibility to keep people engaged and ensure they're following all the procedures. So how are we ensuring that it's both the trainer and the trainee are conforming with what we would require as an acceptable standard?
If I can take that question. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So, from a human resources people's perspective, we have reviewed and reinforced our procedures, looking at our operational training procedures to ensure they remain fit for purpose and current. Area trainers to emphasise adherence to procedures during all training sessions through health and safety briefs and observation activities. Updated risk assessments. We've reviewed operational training risk assessments to ensure scoring is amended where necessary to reflect this data. This will require more specific information requested to the health and safety team. We have updated operational training risk assessments to include any additional control measures required, including any recommended through safety event investigation outcomes. We are undertaking a review of training equipment, review all training equipment for defects and suitability to ensure testing regime is up to date. In terms of monitoring and assurance, visits to be conducted for training and validation days by training assurance manager and assisted by OLAT. Review of the personal injury trends to identify high-risk activities and identify control measures such as task-specific training or adjusting the training delivery. And finally, manual handling. Review of manual handling package and introduce more training-specific training examples as part of the new manual handling package. So there's a lot of work going on in terms of assurance, and it is something that human resources want to work more closely with health and safety. We're obviously responsible for operational training to make sure that we follow through on these recommendations. So it's an ongoing piece of work, but to assure you we are treating it as a priority.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. My first question's partly been answered already because I agree with Councillor Wilson. Having spent 12 years as a development professional myself and prior to that teaching people in a hazardous environment, I think part of it is it's not about training and telling people what risk is, but how we engage in them in identifying and recognising the risks so they don't get into that situation. But I think we've covered that. The other question I have is around, we've spoken about monitoring contaminants and volatiles in the environment. What role does occupational health play for our firefighters? Do they have annual checks such as respiratory function to ensure that their health is maintained and we're picking up anything at an early stage?
To answer your question, yes, they do. And those that are in what are perceived as higher risk activities, so being potentially exposed to more contaminants more often, are subject to more frequent medicals. And also there's the, and forgive me how I pronounce it, the SNOMED codes, which are specific codes in the medical industry. We have those codes now. We've provided those to all staff. They will then give those codes to their GPs, and the GPs, when the individual presents with certain conditions, will flag the industry that those individuals work in as an area that may require further exploration.
Okay, Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, firstly, thank you. I welcome the comments made on contaminants. I think it's a very prudent comment. Are we tagging our reports against the 2023 fire FBU manifesto around contaminants? Are we tagging it against there? Have we got some figures we can provide where we are on that? Because I know I questioned that historically, and I would think we need to be tagging it against what our aspirations. The point was made, how would we compare it with the FBU if they ask the question? I think that's a pretty reasonable question to ask. I think we need to look at that. Because we did have the instance some years ago where we were struggling to get equipment or showers and units in, noting we just passed the White Ribbon Day. We were struggling historically to make sure that our female firefighters had the facilities for hygiene in fire stations equally to our male firefighters. So I think it would be worth just doing some analysis on that, because it is an aspiration, was an aspiration. I see it as a necessary aspiration, that we meet those objectives of that to the best of our abilities, and at some point may come back and do a sort of RAG audit on where we are on that, to see where we've got to, where we've scored, what we've done, what's outstanding, where we need to do, because I think it would be clarity for all members to know that we actually are heading towards that target. I believe it was an aspiration to do so. I see it as a necessity to do so. So I hope we can sort of come back with some information at appropriate time on that, if we can, please, because I respect the question, always like a convert to supporting the FBU, and I respect the tenure that the question was put. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. I think Doug would like to comment on that.
Yeah, sure. And, you know, like Callum, I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of FBU, but what I would say is myself, Deputy Chief Fire Officer, and Ronnie, Director of People, meet with the FBU on a quarterly basis now locally to go through that improvement agenda. And within that, of course, one of their areas of focus is around contaminants management. And I think, broadly speaking, the areas of improvement that they would be seeking to see are consistent with the areas we're seeking to see as officers. So you're quite right, incident ground management, and we've made some real good headway around welfare provision on incident scenes, certainly around PPE. We have had some challenges around PPE because when we signed that initial contract, there was less information and data around contaminants and the replacement schedules that were good practice, and we've been working with our provider around that. And as we move into the next PPE contract, we can reasonably expect quite a substantial increase in cost of that contract in relation to the turnover of PPE required to keep our staff safe. So it's worth noting. I think from an estates perspective, again, you know, I have a lot of dialogue with the FBU. we made some really good progress in terms of the station zoning and mitigating some of the risk around tracking of contaminants around the station. The reality is some of our stations are really difficult to manage around contaminants in terms of size, in terms of layout, compared to, you know, when they were originally built versus somewhere like West Ashland, where actually that was being considered as it was being designed. So we are making some really good progress around some of it and working with the FBU. There's definitely something about behaviours of staff, things like shower within an hour and making sure people are doing that. And again, we're on the same page as the FBU in terms of trying to promote, you know, some of the good practice to go with some of the change we've put in place. The one area that still remains thorny, I suppose, and this isn't Bucks FRS, but I would say sector is the challenges around health screening. So yes, we do some stuff, as Callum described, through occupational health and our assessment of staff, but you know, we're all aware that the FBU would like to see that go further in terms of cancer screening. Very, very difficult area because there's hundreds of different cancers you can screen for. And the one thing I would say is, you know, Simon, you made an offer to Mitch recently in one of our meetings to, you know, come to us with a proposition. You know, is there something that you think it looks like that you want to put before us from an FBU perspective? And we'll have that conversation when it comes back. But so hopefully it gives you confidence we are considering the FBU manifesto. We do have an understanding of where the FBU are around contaminants management, and broadly we are aligned.
Thank you. I'll take up some conversations and see where we are and do some, because I think it's important that we are seen to be meeting that. Also, I was privileged to attend Milton Keynes Council not long ago when I listened to a debate, and they were discussing in that council about some of the problems which were found by an ex-member of our authority, a Liberal Democrat, said about the problems they had getting stuff into areas in Milton Keynes, which won't go into the specific areas. I think there's some work to do on this, and I think we need to see how far we've got along the journey and maybe come back with something more detailed and granular, so it's easier RAG audit where we can actually see where we've got to, because I won't want to neglect it, and I think we do need to follow it through.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Have you got any more questions for this? Councillor Banks.
Yeah, I did have my hand up earlier, but actually both of my questions have been answered because my colleagues have asked them before me.
We're all done. Councillor Stutchbury, you happy to propose that we note the report?
I'm happy to propose we note the report with the comments around that. We will go away and look at the areas mentioned. I think we do need to look at the contaminants and come back with something around the FBU manifesto to see where we are on it, so people can actually see how we're progressing.
That indeed is noted. All in favour of that? Thank you. Moving on then to item 11, the Protection Assurance Report, which will be coming from Adam.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members with assurance on how we are delivering our statutory protection responsibilities, how we're responding to national expectations, and how we're continuing to strengthen our performance following the previous HMRC FRS inspection. Since the 2023 inspection, we have made substantial progress across all areas of protection. The cause of concern has been fully addressed and formally closed, and we have now strong governance, a fully embedded risk-based inspection programme, and a clear quality assurance framework. Our 25-26 delivery plan is on track. Of the 42 agreed actions, as of our last quarterly away day meeting, we now have 30 of those actions complete, with the remaining 12 are progressing as planned, with completion expected by the end of Q4 in March 26. Alongside this, a regional peer review was commissioned and delivered in the first quarter of this year, with thanks to Surrey Fire and Rescue Service. Of the 11 actions identified and all the positive practice that was shared, 6 of these have been completed and 5 remain in progress. I want to highlight that our biggest ongoing risk remains the same as the national picture: attracting, recruiting and retaining qualified fire safety officers. There is a recognise national shortage of competent inspectors, and the pathway to full competency does take a considerable amount of time. We are mitigating this through planned succession, improved career pathways, and improved professional development and accredited training. At present, our protection capability is funded through a mix of core budgets and temporary external grant funding under the Protection Uplift Programme. As we move into next year, we'll continue to review the capacity within the protection team and explore further opportunities to strengthen resilience. Our business engagement framework is now fully embedded and proving really effective. We are seeing improved compliance, stronger relationships with responsible persons, and more consistent approach to advice and enforcement. The primary authority scheme is fully embedded and has grown year on year, with over 400 hours now annually dedicated to supporting national and regional partners. I also want to draw your attention and take the opportunity to highlight the improvements we have made within the risk-based inspection programme and our overall audit activity. We now have a clearly defined methodology that prioritises inspections based on genuine risk. This approach is supported by data, which is refreshed quarterly, and by strong collaboration between the protection team and our data intelligence team. Together, these changes have significantly improved our ability to target high-risk premises and ensure that our resources are deployed effectively. Audit activity is now more consistent, underpinned by enhanced quality assurance processes, improved recording standards, and stronger focus on high-risk settings, including care homes, sleeping accommodation, and complex buildings. As of the 30th of November, 646 audits have been completed this calendar year. Of these, 69% were categorised as high or very high risk, and 70% resulted in non-satisfactory outcomes. This provides good assurance that our targeted approach is having the intended impact. Premises identified as very high risk are now scheduled for annual audits. By the end of November this year, 89% have been completed within the required timeframe. Of the remaining 11%, only 5%, which represents 21 audits, are still yet to be scheduled. Overall, we now have a clear grip on demand, better performance oversight, and more confident and competent workforce delivering audits in line with national expectations. The report also reflects the strength of our partnership arrangements, particularly with local authorities, housing providers, and BSR, the building safety regulator. We're also working with colleagues across the South East region, feeding nationally, to jointly influence and respond to consultation and of the revised fire standard for protection. In summary, this report is designed to provide a clear and balanced view on where we are performing well, where we continue to strengthen, and where our risks remain. The assurance is strong and the improvement trajectory is positive, and I'm recommending today that the protection assurance be noted, and I'll be very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report. So this is my observation both on the protection report and, to be honest, also on the HMI report, which is that both read incredibly positively. And I'd be delighted if that was the case, and I'm not saying it isn't the case, but of course we don't get prizes for saying things are going well. We get prizes when, prize is the wrong phrase, but we get recognised when HMI comes in and says that's the case. And I suppose what I struggled with a bit on the protection report is we asked for this and pushed for this because the visit number was tracking below where we wanted it to be. And I was just cross-referencing the protection report to the state of fire report that was included in the pack as well. And there's quite a detailed section on protection in the state of fire. And there's just a few things that struck me in that I'm not sure if I went back to the protection report, I could get that same line of sight. So it'd just be helpful to understand where HMI are saying that several services still need to make progress. They should address the consistency of their audits, the robustness of their quality assurance processes, and their ability to meet audit targets. It'd just be helpful to get your perspective on, are we collectively really confident that not only have we closed the gap from where we were, because of course that gap existed because we were significantly behind the baseline of where we should be. So are you confident we've closed that gap? And in particular, I guess, I know you say it's about staffing, and I understand that, and I think that's absolutely a challenge and clear. But are we now confident that we will consistently, on, to use their phrase, a sustained and sustainable basis, be able to meet the audit targets? The other area in there that's quite interesting, which I don't think we've ever really talked about before, is the pressure of the competing demands on the protection team, and they talk quite a lot about that in the State of Fire report. So again, it's just good to understand your perspective on how well our team is protected from those competing demands. And then I suppose you made a comment just then about the funding. I suppose, is that leading to, do you think there is a better way that we should be thinking about funding the protection teams to give ourselves, again, a much more sustainable and sustained level of performance in the team?
Thank you. I'll do my best to work through that list of questions. I'll start with the competing demands, as it's quite prevalent to discuss. But you're right, we've got a range of different, and hopefully the report kind of highlighted that the breadth of work that protection do is quite vast. It's relatively complex. But what we do very closely monitor on a monthly basis is things like the number of consultations that we've got, the number of licensing consultations, the number of building regulation consultations that come in, the volume of complaint management that comes in, the level of training that we're detailing to our staff, the number of post-incidents that need to be serviced. So we do look very closely at all the work activity that does take place for our protection team, which does have an impact directly on the number of audits and the number of work that we can do to try and get our staff out doing what they're excellent at, which is going out and assessing, the conditions of the built environment. It's really important that we do look at that on a regular basis and really closely, because we do see trends, we do see peaks, we see consultations that can almost double month on month, depending on what's going on across Milton Keynes and Buckinghamshire. And I guess it directly links to the question you're suggesting around funding. I think we're in a great position now that we've seen some of the benefits of that investment in our staff and seen how they've grown, how they've developed. I can only speak for one example that really strikes me, is that we've seen an individual that, and it probably goes back to the conversation around the impact of our social media campaign, is that we got an individual within our protection team that didn't realise there would be an opportunity within fire that spanned outside of being an operational firefighter. They have now since been brought into the organisation, worked their way through a career pathway within protection, going from a business fire safety advisor up to a fire safety inspection officer, and now moved into a team leader role, which I think is a prime example of the investment, the attraction. We've got to work to ensure that we retain those individuals, and we've got to ensure that we continue to develop people in the same way. Would I like to have more people on my team? Absolutely. Would I like to see us increase our number of audits and the activity that we do? Of course, but I know that we have to be proportionate and consider all the other competing demands and the requirements across the service. Apologies if I've missed any of your points. Please feel free to come back, and I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Councillor. I think Doug would like to...
Yeah, if I could just kind of build on what Adam says, and I'll try not to repeat. I think it's a really fair challenge in terms of, I think, certainly what I took when I came into the role Adam's in now from HMI. One of the key criticisms was that, HMI understand that there's probably more potential work to do for protection than people to do it, but the service probably wasn't able to clearly articulate why we did the things we did and what drove the activity. And I think in terms of our ability now, when they come back in to do that, effective articulation of, how we apply our resource, I think we're in a much better place. I think the quality of audits will show in terms of that consistency of approach, and the outcomes are quite positive, I would say, in terms of our, A, hitting high and very high risk, but also B, the number of non-satisfactory outcomes we achieve. So I think all of that is sound foundations, and we have embed our QA. Maybe there's probably more sophistication around that, but again, we can demonstrate that. The key bit that still makes me a little nervous, and Adam nervous, I think, is just that vulnerability to, to whether you might be able to recruit and retain the right skill set, but also to address spikes in activity. So hitting our audit target is achieved with a fair wind, and when we haven't got people out on training, and when we haven't got a particularly complex building going on. And, it's probably quite likely, Adam, I think, isn't it, that we know we've got 3 of our staff out in December, for example, we won't meet our target. So we do need to be, kind of honest with members about that. And I think the key that Adam and I are discussing in terms of next year's progression, now we can potentially use the budget more effectively, is we need to build some layer of resilience into that protection function. And it probably looks something a bit like use of associates externally when we need them for particular tasks, quite an expensive resource, to be honest, but actually an internal kind of associate model as well, where you can potentially use station end staff, qualify them up, dual contracts for when you get, I don't know, high number of consultations, something like that. So there is work to do, and there is work that will improve our resilience so that we can meet some of those challenges. But I really think from an HMI perspective, we are in a significantly different place to where we were whenever it was 2.5 years ago.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think my question follows on exactly from that point, because when you get to the conclusion on page 175, the final paragraph, and it says the biggest risk to delivering an outstanding protection function is the vulnerability of maintaining the right numbers of qualified staff.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I guess I've come to learn in my short time in local government is there are some functions that are like hen's teeth, and you just can't get hold of them, whether it's social workers, planning officers, or whatever it happens to be, now fire protection staff. One of the things that was set up in Buckinghamshire Council was a social worker academy, because if we can't get them from the market, can we go and develop our own? Now, what I'm mindful of is that any one particular fire service may not be large enough to merit that, but is there merit in talking to neighbours, Thames Valley, South East, that said, how do we organise ourselves to grow our own? And I think the sense of an academy to do your own thing and maybe provide that degree of resilience may be something that's worth considering, to, as I say, maybe pooling with others, but might help advance that or provide a little bit more resilience.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Wilson. That's a really fair challenge, and we'll go away and look at that. It'll be interesting to see what the College of Fire brings in terms of when that's coming through, how that can support us. But a regional approach in terms of exploring how we can be more resilient as the Thames Valley is a great idea. So we'll look at that. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Adam, for a very comprehensive report. I've got a few questions just for understanding. The first one is, how are new premises identified, and what categorises them as high risk or very high risk? How do you pick up on change of use of premises? There's more commercial moving to residential now. On page 169, got key partners. I noticed John Lewis are in there, but not Marks and Spencer, which I would have thought would have been comparable. So what gets an organisation to be a partner? Shopping centres, are shopping centres an entity, or are they a number of organisations within an entity? How do you deal with those? I noticed on page 158 about the confidence and use of enforcement powers. Have we closed any premises for fire reasons? The last example you give case study 4 on page 184, 185, relating to an HMO in Milton Keynes. How long were the owners allowed to operate before the remedial work had to be done? And the very last one is, no mention of prisons. Are they not high risk? Sorry, it's quite a long list.
That's okay, not a problem. I think I've got them all here. So the first one, question 1, in terms of new premises, and I think what you're asking is how do we identify which ones are the highest risk, which are very high, etc. So I won't try and embarrass myself and talk about the kind of 20 different points and how they're weighted in terms of how we come to that kind of conclusion. But the data team, working very closely with the protection team, have worked through kind of a formula, looking at various different kind of measures. And I don't know, Craig, if you want to highlight any of those, but without trying to put you on the spot.
No, it's just we look at lots of different correlation data points, so whether it be basement, height of building, size, what it's used for, all that, and we correlate that with the incident data that affects Buckinghamshire only. And when we just reverse engineer that to see which ones have the highest ratio, the correlation, return that and say, actually, these are the ones that are most, have the most opportunity for risk, and then we identify those. So that's all we do.
For absolute clarification, Buckinghamshire only?
Sorry, Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes.
Just there are two separate data sets in some ways, so yeah.
No, it's all one data set, thank you.
Yeah, so just to build on that as well, so I think it's a really good point, but on that as well is I think it's important that we continue to measure of when we keep going out there to see if the modelling is actually effective. And we've got great confidence in, I mentioned before, that 70% of those that we've been going out to visit have come back as being non-satisfactory, and they can range. So I can tell you now that this year we've had 5 prohibition notices and 7 enforcement notices, which, you know, and below that there are a range of different kind of concerns that may be raised where we have supported those with action plans of matters of fire safety concerns that have been raised and formalised and are tracked. So there's lots of really good activity that's going on, and that will feed back into those quarterly reviews that take part with the data team to continually review and refine and create this live database that ensures that out of the 30,000 plus buildings that we regulate under the order, is that we continue to target those that are most at risk. I'll probably skip the list and go back down to, you mentioned prisons. Actually, prisons don't sit underneath us as the regulator, so that's why they're not included. So although they are potentially high risk, they actually, because they're a Crown estate, they fall under a different kind of regulator in order for them to manage their protection responsibilities. So in terms of change of use, so I think the question was, how do we ensure that we are considering concerns of change of use? That's down to really good partnership working and relationships. Both the teams across Milton Keynes and Buckinghamshire meet very regularly with our partners, with the local authority, to ensure that they're having regular conversations, that we're cited nice and early, even where we're not statutory consultees, where there are change of uses, that they're looking at fire risks and concerns. So, and we have seen some recent examples of where concerns have been raised and shared, joint visits have taken place, and action has taken place early in order for us to rectify and try and manage the safety of the building. You mentioned around the primary authority scheme and around that we're working with John Lewis, and we're not working with Marks and Spencers at the moment. So the primary authority scheme is national. So where we're working with John Lewis at the moment, that is where we're kind of identified as to work with a national-wide large organisation. So I think we've got 14 at the moment that we work with. I can't remember the exact figure. There's a good chance Marks and Spencers may be working with a primary authority scheme, but it just might not be ours. It could be down to capacity, it could be down to location, etc. So I think the great thing about the primary authority scheme is that we don't just have the impact on a single premises. We actually impact on changes that can happen to multiple premises. So it's a really effective scheme, and one that we're really proud that we've got our staff actively working with. And I think I've covered the point around enforcement, and please let me know if I haven't, but we do track that in terms of prohibitions, enforcements and prosecutions if and when they do occur. We track those really regularly to see, in terms of making sure the actions are carried out, that reasonable steps are taken in place, and most importantly, the right education takes place with the responsible person where necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Hussain.
Chair, can I just come back on one point there, please?
I'm sorry, yes?
Yeah. Shopping centres, you didn't actually touch upon those, but the other bit, so just get this right, we are not responsible for protection of prisons. However, the fire occurs, we turn up. So where's the link? How do we know? Do you liaise with prisons about how they assess their risk?
Yeah, do you want me to come in? I can come in first of all. So apologies, that might have been my language, which was, but from a legal point of view, it kind of doesn't fall under us for a regulator, but in terms of our response requirements, our preparedness and our relationships with prisons, absolutely. We've got very good response plans in place. We've got really good relationships. Noticeably, we've seen those recently with a particular prison where we're trying to support and develop and track the number of incidents that take place and try and put a lot of prevention and reduction measures in place. in terms of how do we monitor, track and support. So things like the local resilience forum, but most noticeably in MK we have a local resilience forum, and the prison governor is part of the attendance there. So discussions are taking place not just with us but across multiple different organisations in order to ensure that we consider the safety at those sites.
And the HMO, how long did you give them to remediate their issues? And
Yeah, apologies. On that particular case study, I'll go away and I'll find out a little bit more information. I was conscious that I'd given you 30 pages of it within the pack, so I tried to be quite succinct with the case studies. But I'll go away and speak to the case officer and get a little bit more clarity for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain was next.
One thing that worried me about what you said is that we're not consultees on change of use or planning permissions. The reason I say that, as wearing another hat, is the large increase of two categories. One is conversion of offices into residential units, and number two, the growth of HMOs, house of multiple occupancy, where there's no connection between the people who are staying there. And there's many a time I've heard a councillor say, is this safe? And the question I have in my mind is, do you have any input into that at all? Because by definition, you deal with the aftermath of it. If there is if the kitchen isn't designed properly with proper safety features in the HMO, because there's no responsibility, no one's responsible for the kitchen. Everyone's responsible for their own thing. And also, the growth of offices being converted means a lot of those units are kind of very small units with constrained ingress and egress. So that kind of concerns me that you're not consulted as a primary consultee rather than as a advisory consultee.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of probably most of those points, but most notably when you mentioned around the HMOs, we've got really good partnership working arrangements with both of our local authorities, and we've kind of strengthened those even further this year, especially with the kind of government's remediation acceleration plan that's come in place. So we've got a partnership working agreement that covers the likes of HMOs and looks at how both of our kind of responsibilities and where the lead regulator would step in and take responsibility. And sometimes, I'll be honest, it's quite complex, and sometimes it's really important that we actually share that responsibility through joint visits and joint action. We're in a really, really good place. And probably something just to update all members on as well is that as part of kind of how we continue to develop that relationship and manage the remediation plan is we've actually recently secured £116,500 to further invest in our staff to ensure that we can look to strengthen the capacity and capability of our team to ensure that we've got staff that can deal with remediation, that we can work with our partners and ensure that we continue to manage the likes of responses that are required to the range of different protection work at the moment. So in short, it can be quite complex, but rest assured that we are working very, very closely with our partners to ensure that we don't miss anything.
Any more for Adam on that? I just say, it seems to me that the better we train our team, the better they get at doing the job, the more at risk we are of losing them to the private sector, given the pressure that's coming from that area for people to have their own employees in that area. All the more reason for us to make sure we look after those members of our team as much as we do all the others. Thank you, Adam, for the report. Moving on. Oh, sorry, we need to note the report. Happy to propose that from the chair. We have seconder. All content? Thank you. By the way, if you hadn't caught the case studies at the back of the report, I do think they give a really clear, helpful snapshot of the kind of work that's being done. So we're turning now to Anne-Marie Carter to report on update on HM Inspectorate. Thank you.
Thank you. So this paper provides an update on our HMIC FRS journey, including the latest areas for improvement updates, the recent state of fire reports, and our next inspection. Following our HMIC FRS inspection in 2023, our service was identified with 3 causes of concern in the areas prevention, protection, and equality, diversity and inclusion, alongside a wide range of areas of improvement. As you are aware, earlier this year, HMIC confirmed that all causes of concern are resolved and the HMIC FRS removed us from enhanced monitoring. Focusing on the areas for improvement, we have 2 that remain open. Both have been worked on by the relevant teams and are on track to be completed before the next inspection. We continue to track their progress on a monthly basis via an improvement board, which is chaired by the Chief Fire Officer. On the 5th of November, the HMI released their latest state of fire report. This report is based on the inspection reports published between February 2023 and August 2025, and the themes found in those inspections. On page 37 of the State of Fire report and 240 of your pack, we are mentioned and we're highlighted for having successfully resolved all previous causes of concern and re-enter standard monitoring, but also reflecting significant cultural progress through visible value-based leadership, strategic focus, and well-executed cultural change action plans. Looking to the future and our next inspection, which will shortly be upon us, the next round of inspection will look at the progress we have made since the previous inspections. As in previous years, our performance will be measured against HMIC's characteristics of good performance. The 25 to 27 inspection programme will involve a number of changes from the previous round. So whilst the inspection will still focus on the 3 pillars of effectiveness, efficiency and people, the overall number of diagnostic questions has reduced to 10. HMIC FRS have enhanced their leadership questions in their assessment, and they will look at when they look at people, and will focus on leadership at all levels of the service. For the first time, HMIC FRS will look more closely at our governance arrangements and will assess how each FRS is affected by the Fire Authority's governance, oversight and scrutiny arrangements. Our next inspection commences on the 5th of January, and for those that have been internal meetings, I normally have a countdown, but I haven't got the exact days today. And that will start with a document request and a staff survey. They will then be on site for 2 weeks, week commencing the 23rd of Feb and the 9th of March, completing interviews, desktop reviews and focus group, and then a final virtual week commencing the 23rd of March, which will be more interview-based. I appreciate this as a snapshot of our progress so far, and if any members would like further information, I'd be happy to catch up outside of this meeting. But thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Any questions on that report? Something to look forward to in the new year, Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
I'm very much looking forward to it, Chairman. The 2 outstanding items, obviously, I understand this, the report is submitted way in advance of the meeting, given the very strict deadline set by our Democratic Services team. So, given that we're almost halfway through December, and it says December, one of them I find we discussed this a little bit in the audit committee, the demountable mobile data terminals, feels like it's highly measurable. The other one, in terms of media communication, is a little bit more amorphous. And the level of confidence that where we've got to on that one, given, I know you have a strong relationship with the inspector, that we're confident that we've done everything required to have met that, and we could effectively say right now, yes, we're very happy that we could, on the 10th of December, say complete.
So if I just pick up the comms one, we have got another paper coming to our programme board next week, and that will then close that one out, because we will have everything in place to go live with an out-of-hours support. I think from conversations with the HMI, what they've said is that they can't dictate what we have because it's all relevant to budget, but actually having, as we've laid out there, the different approaches to how we interact with the public sets us up in a good place for that. In terms of demountable MDTs, just going to hand over to Mark.
Yeah, so in terms of the MDTs, there's 2 bits. There's the business as usual bit, making sure that any kind of day-to-day errors are picked up as they go along, so they're now prioritised as a separate category within the help desk software, so we can monitor those to make sure those are addressed in a timely manner. The bit around the demountable bit is maintaining the connection once you take it off the appliance. There's a number of different things we've tried. We're confident the latest config changes we've done have fixed the issue. They're just with Airbus at the moment waiting approval, and then we'll test it the last part of this month to make sure it works.
I think that was a yes, Chairman.
You're good. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I'm noting the report given to us, and noting in the report that it states when we were looking at these things historically and now, it states we need to show a clear rationale allocation of resources. You read further into that section of the report, which is in the paperwork today, it still states that there is a necessity to address on-call firefighters, and it states in there about the 0.5% availability. It also states in that report about the mix and where we haven't got capacity and where it isn't being addressed, and that was in the HMRC report. Do you envisage that question to be answered by the consultation, the outcomes of the consultation? Do you think that question would remain if we don't move forward with a strategic consultation to assess that? This isn't it's a factual question about the realities of where we are. We've had all the discussions outside nothing to do with that. We're here to try and deliver improvements. So I read it in the report, it's still a factor. It's still something that they're asking us to look at. It's still something that we've got to address. The authority took the decision at the previous meeting, of the extraordinary meeting, to actually seek to address this. Would that then turn the dial, hopefully the outcome of that consultation, the information gathered through it, allow us to turn the dial in a sense to address that shortfall, because 0.5% time availability in on-call isn't something we can celebrate.
I'll just come in quickly. In terms of the State of Fire report, that's obviously looking at on-call across the UK. So I think what that's doing is highlighting that there are challenges across on-call in all UK services. I'm just going to pass to Simon or Louise for the second part.
Just it states in page 52 of 50, 53 and 31 and 52 in the report, it states that clearly in the report from the HMRC. It states it clearly in the report, in the paperwork that we've got today. So it remains a constant discussion. It states it in the report, and it states all the fire stations which we discuss endlessly, from Stoke and Church, Brill, Chesham, and so on. It discusses those in the report, and it's in the paperwork today. And I just feel that my question was addressing the on-call thing seems to be ever prevalent.
Well, it is indeed ever present. So.
Yeah, so no, thanks for the question. I think, it's fair to say from our previous two inspections that there were challenges from the inspectorate to look at how we match our resources to risk, how we have a common thread from our community risk management plan right down to what we do day to day at station end. That's the reason why we've reviewed our CRMPs, set about an improvement plan, set about some difficult challenges that we're trying to address. Without getting drawn into that now, but it is, is something that is one of the drivers from our improvement plan. It's fair to say is from what the inspector have found over three full inspections of the service in the past.
Last question then. With the inspector coming back in, I'm presuming we'll present him with the fact that we're doing a consultation and we're looking for the outcome of the consultation as a way of moving forward. I think that's fair, because the timing of the inspection won't be in line with the outcome of the consultation or the decision around the consultation. But I think we need to make the inspector aware that we are, through the consultation, seeking to address these issues, because they were made very clear to us. We can't walk away from them. They were cited to us historically and have been cited to us since 2022, 2023. So we've only just got round to looking to address these issues. So I hope that we'll make the consultation available to the inspector and give him a timeline around the evaluation of the consultation against the possible solutions which the consultation will deliver.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, no, as Councillor Wilson pointed out earlier, he said that we've got a really strong relationship with the inspectorate, certainly through our liaison officer. We are in regular, or Amory is in regular dialogue with them as part of our full inspection. I've no doubt that they will look at the full round of what we're planning to do as part of our CRMP.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions? Then we recommend that the report be noted. Are you happy with that? Thank you. Thank you. That completes our formal business, other than to note the date and place of the next meeting, which will be Wednesday, the 11th of February at 11 a.m. in the Paralympic room here in this building. So thank you for your attendance and your interest today. Look forward to you having a joyous and Christmas and a successful New Year if I don't see you again this year, and we'll see you in February. Thank you.